Welcome to the Shared Path. I'm Maggie Linton. The world of magic, spirits, and heritage all combined for an exciting new novel from New York Times bestselling author Roshani Chokshi. The Spirit Glass moves away from her Arusha and Pandava series to an exciting new heroine, Corazon Lopez. She's turning 12 and ready for adventure. Welcome, Roshani.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's begin with your background. It's quite different than a lot of others. It's Filipino and Hindu.
Yes, my mother's from the Philippines. My father is from India.
Well, I have a really close friend from the Philippines. And I tell you, when you started talking about the food, I understood, especially the purple cake that has a really long name.
Oh my goodness, it's delicious. The sapin sapin, it's everything. It's a
Yeah.
very, very unique flavor profile to the Philippines. It's very fragrant, ricey, all this kind of just, oh, it's my favorite.
Yeah. And then the pancit, too, is also very good.
Always delicious and very usually we have it around like it's on every table all of the time, but it's especially important around New Year's and during the holidays because the long noodles represent a long life.
Exactly. Well, my friends just recently had a baby. It's about 7 months old, and so
Oh,
at their celebration, the pancit was there. They get the long noodles, get the long noodles.
yum. They are
So
so good. So good.
exactly, exactly. And I hear everybody makes it a little different.
That's true. That's
Yeah.
true.
All right, let's talk about you, because you have gone through another series where you mainly followed your Hindu heritage. The
Mhm.
Filipinos are ready to roll, aren't they, with Corazon?
Oh yeah. And it was so different tackling this sort of story versus the Hindu mythological books. I've written like maybe 7 books that drink from that region's folklore and history, but Corazon's story required a lot more research, and it was so rewarding. And it took years, honestly. There's so much about how stories are preserved, especially from countries that have been colonized. The way the British Raj treated ancient Sanskrit epics in India was that they preserved them, they translated them, versus when the Spanish came to the Philippines, I mean, a lot of that native religion, a lot of that folklore was decimated with the introduction of Catholicism. And so I found myself dealing with with stories that had a lot of holes in them and trying to step tenderly around that colonial legacy.
Did you know that the target audience for you was really going to be middle grade and young adults, and just going forth with that and kind of teaching lessons and history at the same time?
Well, I don't think that I ever set out to um, give a lesson per se. I think that, you know, children are such discerning readers that the moment they even have a whiff of condescension, they're out of the story. And I feel like as a writer, when I feel like I'm writing for the younger version of myself, it's not something I conscientiously do. But I will say that in all my stories, I'm trying to tackle the questions that I had at that age. Um, and I find that there's really my favorite audience is the children's audience. And the reason for that is simply because I don't think that we are ever too far removed, spiritually at least, from who we are as children. The things that haunted us then, fascinated us then, oftentimes they continue to do so long into our adulthood.
All right, let's talk about Corazon's journey. Um, Mom and dad are gone. Auntie is there teaching her the lessons of life. And how did you come up with that grouping? And but yet mom and dad come to visit. They do, mine do in my dreams, but hers
Oh,
a whole
that's
different way.
beautiful.
Yeah.
I there was it's rather more of a joke, especially as a parent. But when we think about parents in children's fiction, they're oftentimes absent, or they're not that great at being parents, or they're dead. And there's this idea that in order for children to have fantastical adventures, the parents really need to be off scene. And So I wanted to tackle that. But I also wanted to show that Corazon has never once doubted that she is loved. And the older that we get, that's such an extraordinary privilege to realize that you are loved. And so I knew that I wanted her parents to not really be there, but to be there just enough. This is very much a story about grief. And the fact that Corazon is able to visit with the ghosts of her parents every Sunday is a huge catalyst for why she wants her powers to mature in the first place. Um, but in terms of like the grouping, why she's raised by her Aunt Tina, who's her mother's sister, and why she's still able to see her parents, for me, that was about exploring the nature of grief, exploring how we grieve, how we cling to things, um, and essentially what remains, and how we get past awfulness. You know, when you're a kid, I feel like the first and ugliest lesson of adulthood is grappling with why do bad things happen to good people? And there's never a good answer for that. We just have to make peace with the things that we will never have answers for.
But pain also leads to happiness too, as
Yeah.
you have a tendency to let go of the
Yeah.
pain. Mm.
Yes. Yeah. I saw this beautiful cartoon. I think it was in the New Yorker a while back, but it was this depiction of grief and it was labeled as like a slab of butter. And then it was experience and it was the dough. And it was somebody making croissants, but like that over time, this grief is layered and folded and folded and folded. And it doesn't disappear, but it gains context and richness from the other experiences that life has to offer.
All right, she's got a cast of characters that go through her journey and explain what turning 12 is. It kind of reminds me of bar mitzvah, bat mitzvah, that kind of thing. You're turning of age, though it's for them it's 13. But at 12, in the Filipino heritage, it's something very important. Also with her mix of magic.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, for Corazon, she's waiting for her powers to emerge. And I really do love playing with these ideas of cultural thresholds. Exactly as you said, like I was so lucky growing up. I got to go to so many bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. It was like the highlight of seventh grade. And for me, like I think like that's when you turn 13 in the Jewish faith, or you're able to you read from the Torah and enter adulthood in that way. And in a lot of at least I also went to like quinceañeras. Like so there's like these certain ages. I wouldn't say that in Filipino culture, like, oh, you're 13 years old, and like now you are officially an adult. But I was thinking about those those invisible lines in the sand when you start growing up. And that's why for Corazon turning 12 years old, having her Babaylan powers emerge, all of this is about her leaving her childhood behind and entering something else.
Let's talk about that great gecko, Sasso.
Oh
What
my
a
God,
character. I
he's
loved
so fun.
he was so much fun. Talk about him. Where did he come from?
Oh, well, I'm glad that he was as much fun to read about as he was to write about. So, like as we have in the Western imagination, this idea of witches with their familiars, Babaylans, who are the spirit guides in Corazon's world and were shamans, um, in a lot of like native spiritual practices, they have, at least in my creative license, I gave them companion anithos. And anithos are the spirits of natural landmarks. They're the spirits of trees, waterfalls, lagoons, that sort of thing. And the more powerful the babayla, and the more powerful the companion anito. So, of course, Corazon has no powers. And so, for all intents and purposes, her companion Anito is Samson, also known as Sasso, and he looks like a polka dotted blue gecko. The thing is, however, when Sasso looks at Sasso, he sees a reptile of extraordinary prowess. He sees a baby crocodile. He sees an apex predator. So you cannot tell this gecko twice that he is, in fact, not a ruthless, bloodthirsty killer on the loose. He is just an itty bitty lizard. I really, really adore when you have these like stark juxtapositions of characters, right? You have like this monster who's afraid of his shadow, or you have this itty bitty thing that's just like, more vicious than a feral pit bull or something like that. that was those sort of juxtapositions are things that have always made me laugh ever since I was a kid, and they are really, really fun to write about. So that's where Sasso emerged. He's also very much kind of like a stand-in voice for the reader in a lot of ways. He's the one who's pointing out things like this is really bad. Like at one point, he makes this joke about Aunt Tina that this is pretty crappy parenting. And like, why are we being left to our own devices? I don't think that this is good. Is this neglect? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that he says that I imagine a reader would be thinking about, but he says them out loud. And I think that that's always really fun.
No, the thing is it's someone that Corazon can actually talk to
Oh, yeah.
and kind of go over what her next move is going to be. And he's the voice of reason, but also the voice of skepticism,
He
all rolled
is.
in one.
Absolutely. Skepticism, reason. He's the unhinged voice being like,
Yeah.
you should just do these decisions that are completely outside the rules of society. Sasso is chaos.
Leo.
Oh, Leo. Yes, he was another really important character in the book, you know. So for Corazon in the story, when her spirit key, which is what allows her to see her parents every Sunday, it goes missing and it's taken by a vengeful ghost. And so she and Sasso have to figure out how to lay this ghost to rest so she can get her spirit key back in the hopes that her powers will finally emerge and she can bring her parents back from the dead. But along the way, she meets Leo, and Leo is a 12-year-old ghost. He doesn't have his memories anymore. But if there's one thing that he clings to, it is his deep, deep, abiding desire to be a writer, a ghost writer, if you will. And he's a really funny character. And he's also a character who has a lot of secrets. And he was extremely rewarding to write because he sort of is the childlike voice for Corazon. He's the person reminding her what it's like to be a kid, how to act like a kid, how not to shoulder so many burdens anymore.
And also, he is, along with Sasso, they are the people she learns to depend on, but at the same time, forcing her to do more, to be more of herself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, especially when I consider what so many young people are experiencing these days, they're in cities that are deeply affected by climate change. There's gun violence, there's political upheaval. They suffered so much during the pandemic where they weren't able to socialize the way that they deserved. And then I think about characters like Corazon, who to me also emerges from this environment of traumas, both big and small. And the hardest thing at that age, I think, is to maintain your sense of innocence and wonder and the struggle to be a kid, even when you're in these situations that are forcing you to grow up. You have to find some way of balancing that magic again.
I know one of the things that I enjoyed about this book more than anything was every time when it seemed like it was dire, you put in a couple of comedic things that just lifted it up and made you keep on reading because you
Oh,
wanted to find out what happened. Where did that little voice of humor come from?
oh gosh, I think that voice has been with me since I was a kid. You know, it to me it was the only way to um sometimes tackle the things that scared me the most, right? Like I'm sure many people can relate to this, but being scared of your basement as a kid, I just hated going into the basement. I hated when my mom was like, "Can you go get that bag of rice from downstairs?" I was like, "I'll just starve. I don't want to go into the basement. It's creepy down there. I don't like it." And my siblings and I, we would essentially bully one another to see who was going to be stuck going into the basement to get mom's food item or whatever. And inevitably, all three of us would go together. And then whenever the thing that was asked for was grabbed, we would all race up the stairs, oftentimes on all fours because we were so scared. And I don't know, we looked like animals just galloping up the stairs. And as the oldest sibling, it was my duty to make sure that I beat all of them, but then also make sure that I like close the basement door on everybody's face. They're all scared. It's really fun being the oldest sister. But, when it was just me down there and I had to go get stuff on my own, I would tell myself that if there was a ghost, that ghost must be shocked. Like, what the heck is it seeing? What is it looking at? Why are these children shrieking? It's just trying to go about its business and haunt the hallways and, reenact its death over and over, and everybody's ruining it. And, this haunting is performance art. Stuff like that makes me laugh. It's the thing that says, gosh, horror and humor, they really can live side by side. Um, yeah, they just would make certain episodes in childhood 10 times more bearable.
The other thing that you point out is the beauty of nature. And when you talk about nature, each tree, each leaf having its own, I totally understood. My husband's hobby is cactus and succulents. And I go in and I touch them and I talk to them. And, we have trees in our yard. And if one is not doing too well, I come out and I touch it and tell it, come on, let's be part of this grouping here. You have a life, let's live it. And your awareness of, okay, kids, it's up to you to help make nature grow, the environment be positive. I love that.
Oh, I'm very deeply honored to hear that. I mean, and I love that you speak to your plants and your trees. I think that I just I love that sense of shared connectedness, and that's really the magic of reading as well. It's what truly allows us to relate to people that we will never meet, and experiences that we will never have. It just cultivates a deep sense of empathy, which is so important.
It's also things that we share too.
Hmm.
Again, we are around nature. We are breathing the same air, whether we want to look at it or not. We are
Yeah.
drinking the same water. It goes through, comes out refiltered, and comes right back to us again. And that's the one thing that your book, all throughout, really does say pay attention to nature, pay attention to the fact that they deserve to be here too and live their best lives.
I'm glad that that was recognized.
Yeah. All right. I want to go back and talk just a little bit about your other two series
Yeah.
and where you're going with those. And also, are we going to hear more from Corazon?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, so my other series, I mean, I'm the author of the Irish on the End of Time series, and the Gilded Wolves trilogy, both of which are complete. They were so fun to write. Irish very much celebrates Hindu mythology. I would say the Gilded Wolves is like a national treasure kind of tale. It's historical fantasy. And it's a place where, again, I get to explore episodes in history and I get to reimagine them with the fantastical lens. Um, I think that the Spirit Glass is very much a standalone. I think that where I leave the characters is all that I have to say about them. And considering what I put them through, I'm sure that they would thank me for that. Um, as far as what's next for me, I mean, as you know, I've got a little one at home, and so I hope that's what's next for me is rest, sleeping through the night and sleeping more. And it's an astounding what you'll it's astounding what falls to the wayside of one's own mind when we don't get enough sleep. It's just you're just unable to function the next day. And so I sometimes feel like I'm surviving by the skin of my teeth, and yet at the same time, I'm so overwhelmed with wonder whenever I can look at my daughter, see her smile, and see her noticing things for the first time, have the chance to explain them to her, to tell her stories, even though she's not going to remember any of them right now because she's, functionally just a potato with hair. But just the fact that she makes us laugh so much, there's so much delight there. So that's what lies ahead for me right now.
So you're going to slow up on the writing, but I know something's going to sneak out and hit you, and then you're going to be at it again, aren't you?
Oh yeah. When I get to sleep for 4 days in a row, my brain is frantic with daydreaming. I can't get the ideas out fast enough. The only thing is I just don't have the time. So I hope that the time comes soon. But until then, I'm enjoying this new season of life. I'm just trying to appreciate it for what it is.
We've talked so much about the guidance for young people, but what are some of your thoughts that you'd like to leave with them at this point in their lives? Or for actually people in general?
Oh gosh, for people in general. Gosh, who am I to say how to what advice to give or anything? But I will say uh, one piece of advice I was given as a new mother was that I should ignore the people who tell me to cherish every moment. Every moment is a really hard thing to cherish. Some moments you're just trying to get to the other side of them. You're just trying to survive. But she said, even if you don't cherish every moment, find one moment every day to cherish. I think that's so valuable. I feel like the secret ingredient to creativity is boredom. It's cultivating a sense of space and time apart from other people. It's about opening your mind to to just drift, through your thoughts and to be bored, which is it's the fertile ground for curiosity, right? And that's so critical for inspiration. So that's my advice to everybody that if you can, find moments to be bored, find moments of boredom to cherish.
Right. I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm so glad we were able to do this.
Thank you so
You
much.
are delightful. And of course, I wish you blessings with you and the new baby and family and everything.
Thank you.
And I will keep my eye out open for you, my eyes open for you because I know there's more to come. You're just delightful. And oh, I recommend the Spirit Glass to everyone. And that surprise ending. Oh my goodness. I'm not saying what it is, but I think people will definitely be surprised. And it just adds to the joy of the family.
Oh, I'm so glad. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay.
Continued success. Once again, many thanks to New York Times bestselling author Roshani Chokshi. Her new novel is The Spirit Glass. More on Roshani at her website, roshanichokshi.com, and also on Instagram as Roshani Chokshi. Her books are available through the publisher, HarperCollins, Amazon, and other locations, and of course, at her website. Until next time, seek peace, spread lots of love. I'm Maggie Linton.